Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, helping higher education marketing leaders share knowledge about learning, strategies, and tactics that are relevant today. See what you can learn today by listening to one of our episodes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, hosted by Concept 3D. On this podcast, we like to discuss topics around creating and capturing demand in higher education. A little bit about our sponsor, Concept 3D. Concept 3D helps bring your campus to life virtually. We have served the higher education community for over a decade with our award-winning interactive maps, virtual tours, and now recently events. Improve your campus communications, student engagement, and recruitment with our powerful location-based virtual solutions. My name is Shiro, and I will be your host today. And today, I am super excited to have Sam Mahra join us. Sam is a highly resourceful recruitment and technology leader in higher education, enrollment management, recruitment, communications, and marketing. He's currently serving as Executive Director of Enrollment at Life University. Sam, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Cheryl. It's a pleasure to be here.
And, just for our listeners who don't know, can you give us a quick summary and explanation of Life University?
Yes, Life University is one of the premier chiropractic colleges in the world. It's actually the world's largest chiropractic college. We have a Doctor of Chiropractic program, an online school, undergraduate, and also graduate programs. And we're approximately about 3,000 students.
That's amazing. And I know your background isn't just in this field, right? You work in a traditional higher ed environment at, Kennesaw? I might have pronounced that.
No worries. So I worked at Kennesaw State for a while,
Kennesaw,
which is the second largest university in the state of Georgia, running their admission office, and was an exciting time. They went through a lot of great changes. So, and I've done some brief stints and also in the for-profit sector, but a wide variety of schools of different sizes.
Got it. And I know something you're really involved in is speaking about leadership, thinking about leadership. I know in our previous call, I mentioned and asked around, how do you create an effective team? How do you become a leader in that? And you mentioned it's all about, creating an environment for psychological safety. I'd love for you to open up a little bit more on that topic.
Yeah, my leadership approach really toward managing employees really focuses on developing an environment of trust where people could be heard, where people could be valued. And you really just have to kind of divide it into four quadrants. And the reason why I feel psychological safety is important is that you don't want employees to feel anxious. You really want them to be comfortable. You want them to be confident in sharing their ideas and performing their job at their fullest abilities. And when you have that environment where it's a little bit worry-free, trying to make it as stress-free as possible when you can, it definitely helps people focus on the right things.
That's amazing. And speaking about focus, we had our first call, about almost 2 months ago, and you first mentioned the word quiet quitting to me.
Yes.
And I feel like I was just laughing about this before this. I feel like since you told me about this, I literally can't stop hearing it. I hear it literally every day. What is quiet quitting, and what are some of the things you're doing or you believe leaders should be doing to prevent that?
Yeah, so I heard when I first heard the term quiet quitting, it was actually at a workshop of enrollment management leaders here in Georgia, and it just really stuck in my head too as well. And just the concept of quiet quitting are when employees do just the bare minimum to stay employed while probably planning their exit. But since that time, a lot of people have, I've read a lot of reading on quiet quitting, a lot of articles and a lot of thoughts about it, whether it's on LinkedIn and online, is that process really misnamed? Is it really people just setting boundaries, saying that, hey, we're not going to take on more work than we really need to, getting away from that hustle culture kind of mentality, and actually, or if you're going to take on more work, setting those boundaries where you'll say, hey, I need to get paid more, we need to reevaluate my workload. So there's two ways you could look at it as well. And the reason why it resonated with me is because we've experienced a lot of turnover in admissions offices, and that's been exacerbated by the Great Resignation and also the pandemic, where people got a taste of remote work, flexible schedules, and higher ed really doesn't accommodate those type of formats very well.
Gotcha. And when it comes to, let me think about this question real quick.
Sure.
Are you seeing that this is, where are people exiting to if they're leaving higher education and education in general? Do you think they're just shifting into other higher ed positions, or do you think they're moving into other spaces as well?
I think they're either shifting to other institutions, but from some of my colleagues, they actually shifted out into
Gotcha.
Corporate roles or maybe higher ed adjacent roles, whether it's in HR. In admissions, I've seen a lot of folks go into early career development, for example, or university recruiting or other HR related roles like talent acquisition. I've had other folks who work on the technology side of higher ed, obviously moved up IT companies or the vendors that they contract services with. And just due to the benefits, the work hours, and also the remote prospects just seem really appealing to them, and also the pay. And that's something that we struggle with here as well. But I'm very grateful for my team. We've had some turnover, but they really picked up the slack, and I really try to be mindful of, the workload that's on them and not overextending them too much.
Got it. Thank you. Shifting gears just slightly a little bit. I'm really curious, since you moved out of traditional higher ed and now you were in medical education before and you're now with Life University. Are there certain things that you've noticed that are very different from, each subset of that within different parts of education?
Yeah, I think when I was working in the for-profit sector and the private and the public state universities, I think, first of all, the public state universities really are very process driven in terms of compliance and regulations and how you're supposed to do things. Typically very well funded, kind of see higher ed as a service good, but I think I've also seen maybe a lot of waste at certain times, or maybe where resources could be better allocated correctly in terms of, taxpayer dollars and things like that. And, that's not an admonishment of, public higher ed, but I think that's just also the feeling that maybe the general public has as well. I definitely feel my experience in the private ed sector, whether it's for profit or private, can move a little bit quicker. It's a little bit more agile in a lot of sense, but all across the board, what I've noticed is that, every institution that I've worked at, it's been extremely hard to change or adopt new ideas. I think we're kind of seeing that shift now after the pandemic, or if it's exacerbated it, where you kind of have to keep up with market expectations and seeing the student as a customer, and that education is really a consumer good now.
Got it. Again, kind of moving into a new topic here. I know you have a lot of experience in growing in admissions, enrollment, and recruitment. In our previous conversation, you talked about how it's about all these three things: people, process, and technology. Can you go into a little more detail around that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start off with people. I think with any great organization, it really depends on the quality of people that you hire, how well they're trained, how well they're onboarding, how well they're executing against that strategy, and kind of knowing a little bit about their background and accomplishments and how that would apply to the environment that they're in at that given point in time. In terms of process, admissions processes can be very burdensome. I usually use the example of if applying to college is harder than getting a pre-approval on a mortgage, then we probably need to reevaluate some things. Or if we're constantly asking for the same information over and over and over again, it's not serving the student well. So looking at that in terms of process and making it really a frictionless experience. And technology, I think students have expectations, and with the way they interact, by whether they apply online and kind of that user experience or that customer experience, whether you're learning through an LMS, a learning management system such as Blackboard, you're working on your student portal, submitting homework assignments, or the process of the messaging and marketing that you're getting from email campaigns and whatnot. It's really going to demonstrate the value that university has, or that perception of value.
Got it. And going back to your process aspect, have you noticed, I'm not too familiar with applying to different types of colleges.
Sure.
is the process different from the for-profit and nonprofit?
Yeah, I mean, most colleges, public institutions will use the Common App. That's kind of one thing. You use
Right.
one application, and it can get sent to many different ones, so you're not constantly have to upload
Okay.
the same information over and over again. I think what's really confusing to students is trying to navigate the expectations. When you really ask for requirements, typically in the more the selective side of institutions versus the non-selective, I think the non-selective schools are really much cut and dry on what their expectations are. You kind of know what the GPA is, you know what you need to do. As you get to more selective schools, it's a little bit more ambiguous, when you're asking an admission council, like, hey, what are my chances? What are my prospects? You're also thinking now also about removing bias from, if your school does a holistic review process, how do you not let specific biases come into play too? And that's a big conversation as well.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, I had one other guest on here. He was explaining more around the process around financial aid and how it's too confusing because every school has a different process and messaging. And he was saying, like, hey, there should be like a common app for financial aid basically for schools.
Right.
And I thought that was a pretty cool comment because, if you're a first gen or low income student, like it's probably the first time you're getting asked these questions, and every school asks the questions differently.
Right.
And so as someone who's, doesn't have a lot of experience with financial responsibility, it's really hard to like understand what the language means when you're not used to it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So one topic I'm really hearing a lot in higher ed today is speaking on outcomes. So what I'm hearing is, a lot of these new boot camps, 2-year schools and non-traditional schools are popping up. And one thing I feel like they're doing a really good job with is speaking about messaging that resonates with outcomes or ROI, like in terms of like career placement. What is this course going to get you? And there's a lot of like cyber boot camps and coding boot camps now that are popular. And I'm really curious to hear, like, what is the take in more of the medical or preventive medicine field? Like, is that something that exists in that field as well? Because I feel like in general they would be doing something differently than like an arts and science degree.
It's probably for within like a STEM field like cybersecurity. It's a little bit different on medical or health professions because there's usually a licensure component and certain professional associations that oversee the content, making sure that the doctors or chiropractors who are graduating are meeting a certain standard of excellence in terms of their education and certain milestones. So that would probably be a little bit harder, but I think short-term programs like medical assistant or maybe an LPN program that's maybe a little bit more cost effective, or for someone who doesn't want to take a giant leap or isn't really interested in becoming a medical doctor or a chiropractor, that might be a good option for them, like a medical technologist.
Gotcha.
But it's really hard to do those programs, in a boot camp format because they do require significant lab components.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm thinking more from a marketing demand generation perspective, where just even reshaping the messaging to be more outcome focused. What is just taking one even further step back, like what is the pulse within education around medicine or preventive medicine as a whole right now? Are we seeing like similar situations where like traditional higher ed, we talk about the enrollment cliff a lot. What is the pulse there within your space?
We actually host these events called Life Leadership Weekends 4 times a year, and we often see students who are considering traditional medical school or osteopathic school, and also chiropractic. We're having worked at both. They're 2 different philosophies. Sometimes they're in alignment with each other, and sometimes they're at conflict. But I think, when we look at healthcare in our country, it's really based on chronic disease. And let's prescribe a medication. I think there's a group of people in the population are like, hey, let's keep things healthy. Let's prevent things. Let's keep our bodies maintained so we don't get to that point. And I think we appeal to that kind of student who kind of shares that, health focus rather than just like, okay, we're going to mask a symptom with a pill or just prescribe something. other students were like, well, let's get our bodies healthy first and use that medication and other modalities as a last resort. There's really no right or wrong answer, and everybody's going to be different. But I think most people, just with the cost of healthcare going up, they're looking for something different.
Got it. And so in my mind, I don't know all the right medical terms for it, but preventative type care is a field that is growing. Then is kind of what I'm hearing from you.
Absolutely.
Just because of the effects of the cost of healthcare. So people are looking to be more preventative now.
Absolutely.
Than they are with, like you said, afterwards, post illness or disease. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome.
They're looking for I mean, I would even say it's like I guess an analogy would be, how instead of, reaching for like a prescription drug or wanting that, there's some people who don't want to do that. So they'll maybe use CBD, for example, or massage therapy, things like that.
Got it. Or does yoga count in there as well?
Absolutely.
I do a lot of stretching.
Exercise or physical activity. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, Sam, it was so great to have you on today. I love that we have a little bit different of a use case just because of your experience outside of traditional higher ed. And so thank you so much for sharing all your insight. I was wondering where our listeners could connect with you as well.
Yeah, our listeners can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Sam Mahra, Mahra. You also, if anyone's interested in becoming a chiropractor, learning about holistic health, or pursuing a career in that or education in that, just visit www.life.edu.
Great, thank you so much.
No
and to our
problem.
listeners,
Thank you,
thanks. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in, and come join us on the next one. Thanks, Sam.
No problem, Cheryl. Take care.